The 2024 European Parliament election in Poland will be held on June 9th. It has been one of our main topics over the last several weeks. To sum up the key issues and what we can expect after the vote, we're being joined by Professor Katarzyna Pisarska, Casimir Pulaski Foundation and Warsaw Security Forum. Good evening, delighted to have you with us.
Good evening.
Delighted, madam. I wonder if we could just start overall, if you could sum up what you think of the campaign for the European parliamentary elections this year, and also if you could compare it a little bit. How does it differ from a national campaign?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think in Poland, the campaign was at the beginning very slow. Of course, we had local elections back in April, and this was the third election in the row. Some politicians always tell me that this was a hell of a half a year, that they've never encountered anything similar to have to prepare every 2-3 months for the next campaign. So you could see a certain exhaustion of all political parties at the end of the campaign. And I think everybody's waiting for Monday just to have these 3 big elections that happened since October, the parliamentary election, then local elections in April, and finally this one. So I think it took a very long time for the political parties to actually fine-tune their messaging. What are they really fighting for? You have to remember that, each of these campaigns differed very much. The October campaign to the national parliament was really about, the future of Poland, national issues. The local campaign was much more diverse because we're talking about completely different issues in different parts of Poland. It's much less politicized, although much more politicized than in the past, but still it's all about the people who are delivering on the local level what the voters need. Here it's more complicated because it's an election about Europe, about our representation in Europe, but also about the future of the entire continent, and most importantly about the European Union as an organization, as a supranational organization. So what we have seen at the end is a kind of clash of 2 ideas, an idea of more Europe, of Europe that is engaged in solving large problems which cannot be solved on a national level. For example, climate change, for example, the migration crisis, for example, the questions of single market, how to make it better for the citizens of the European Union. And then on the other side, the campaign was about sovereignty, that the European Union is taking away from us, certain rights, that we should fight back, that this is a kind of almost hostile space, that it is not us co-deciding, somebody else is co-deciding, but it was never fully, defined who then is co-deciding there. And at the end of the day, I think we completely lost, and a lot of voters lost the real picture, that the European Parliament is a supranational institution. So when we will see our members of Parliament go there next week, the following weeks, they will not be dealing with national issues. They will be dealing with issues that are important for the entire European Union. So they will not be able to look only from the lenses of what is important for Poland. They'll have to look at from the lenses what is important for the entire European Union, what kind of policies work for everyone. And of course, this campaign all over Europe, not only in Poland, was about security. I think that was the key issue, and this is what the European Parliament also understands. When I speak with my colleagues from other EU countries, they say, the European Parliament's agenda for the next 5 years is going to be all about security.
That's right. Yeah. You mentioned security. But I think that most parties are agreed on security. So what are they talking about to differentiate themselves amongst themselves? I mean, it seems that they're finding it very difficult.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so in Poland, definitely. And even in the European Union, most parties agree. And that is a shift that, for example, the question of migration, that has been especially illegal migration, that has been a very polarized issue. We have been seeing actually a closing up of this polarization across the board. Why? For example, the largest party in the European Parliament, the European People's Party, has moved from being a kind of, mainstream open Europe party to saying, no, we need to protect our borders. No, we need to be much more focused on making sure that, if we allow people to come, this is in a regulated way, that we know who's coming, we know why, and so on and so forth. And thus we saw the passing, and again, this is not the European Parliament, it was the Council, so all the governments agreeing to this voting in the Council, the Immigration Pact. And I think that was already the first sign that on the questions of security, there is an expectation across all parties, across the board, that the European Union will take seriously the protection of our borders. We have here been much more outgoing in the sense that 70%, I think, of Poles consider the question of protection of our borders as a very important issue. I think what differs this government from the previous is that the current government wants to engage Europe and the European Union, including agencies such as Frontex, in helping us to protect this border. So this is something I think, that is going to remain. How do the parties differentiate themselves? Again, not on security. They find the things that are the most controversial for example, certain elements of the Green Deal. Again, people think that the Green Deal is some kind of a law. Yes, like there's some kind of one law that is the Green Deal, but this is not the case. The Green Deal is a policy which was created because if we would go back 5 years ago and we were sitting in the studio in 2019 and you would ask me what is the major issue for voters across Europe, I would tell you climate change. Mm-hmm. Everybody, and that's why the Greens in 2019 had come in with a very big representation to the European Parliament because the majority of Europeans were worried about climate change. And that gave the legitimacy to the Parliament to press the European Commission to propose laws that would really tackle the problem of climate change. 5 years after, actually, we did a lot of things, but some of these many laws, many regulations, many policies, this is, a whole complex of things we're talking about, proved to be too strict. Yes, and that has been felt for a variety of reasons, for example, by farmers. Partly it's because of these regulations, partly it's because what's happening on world markets generally in agriculture. There is a decrease of prices of products, and of course, those farmers that produce more expensively, and this is the case of European farmers, lose on this. And of course, the easiest way in such a campaign is to blame everything on the Green Deal. There are things, and we're seeing this, it's going to also happen under this 5 years of the European Parliament. There will be changes to the Green Deal, especially those very restrictive parts that concern farmers. But it doesn't mean we are abandoning the idea to be CO2 neutral. That's not what Europeans want. We don't want to burn energy, to pollute the environment. We don't want to add up to the climate change that we're experiencing, even here in Poland, very profoundly, and in countries such as Spain, this is becoming a major issue altogether. So again, I think we're going to see, the Parliament being much more focused on security issues, but we're not going to abandon the other policies that are so important for European citizens.
Right. One issue that we're also discussing, and I believe that is people concentrate on, is the rise of radical right. And I mean, the vote in the Netherlands took place yesterday. Of course, we don't know the results, but of course, Wilders will probably perform well, his party. So, are we expecting a significant shift in terms of power dynamics in the European Parliament towards the right?
Well, a significant shift would mean that the two mainstream parties lose the ability to form a coalition. And that's not going to happen. The two mainstream parties is the EPP, the European People's Party, and the Social Democrats. They have been creating this grand coalition for decades now, basically. And they have been, the driving force in the European Parliament. Now, a policy shift could happen in a situation in which EPP decides to change the coalition partner and move into coalitions with the far right. Now, the far right is a pleiad of different parties. The Polish, for example, Polish Law and Justice is not the same as Fidesz in Hungary, yes? We disagree on many things, on Russia, for example, yes? Fidesz would definitely not allow for more sanctions. It would actually, if it were up to Viktor Orban in Hungary, we should give big parts of Ukraine to Russia and settle some kind of, peace deal and basically abandon Ukraine in the process. For Law and Justice and all Poles, this is completely unacceptable. This is against our interest. And that type of completely different, agendas is prominent in the far right. So, for example, the Prime Minister of Italy, which also comes from a far right party, is in complete disagreement with many parties in the Netherlands far right when it comes even to the future of the European Union, of the voting questions. So it's a very complicated thing, I think, to find unity between the far right parties. And although some say that the EPP and Ursula von der Leyen, if she becomes the next president of the Commission, might, ponder doing a different coalition, but I personally don't think this is going to happen. I think it's courting right now. Ursula von der Leyen was very clear that she wants Prime Minister Meloni on her team. She thinks that although it's a far-right party, it's a very constructive far-right party. It's a party that has supported Ukraine very strongly. It's a party that, yes, is very tough on immigration, but this is no longer a problem for Ursula von der Leyen because EPP has also become just that. So many of these, blocs that weren't sticking together, now they do stick. But of course, EPP and Ursula von der Leyen will not go into a coalition if it will consist of Fidesz parties, and so on and so forth. So I think it's going to be too complicated. Of course, let's see how much of the votes will the far right diverse parties receive. They will form 2 or 3 political parties in the parliament. They will be different between these smaller political parties. And only then we are going to see whether something that Prime Minister Meloni calls the Rome coalition, because she was able to create such a coalition from a variety of far-right parties in Italy. She wants to repeat this in the European Parliament. Whether that is possible, I give it a 10% chance.
10%.
Yes.
That's it. All right. And just a quick question here. How about on the left?
Mm-hmm.
Will the left be able to take advantage of these divisions on the right?
Yes and no. In terms of trying to impact agenda, I think the left might be in a better position if the EPP, who will be a clear winner, decides, to form a coalition with the Social Democrats and others, yes, because we don't know how it's going to look like. But it will definitely not be able to create a coalition of its own without the EPP. So the EPP still remains the core of the decision-making, as it has been the case for the last few decades.
Well, there you go. Madam, always a pleasure having you with us.
Thank you.
Thanks
It was
so
a
much.
pleasure to be here. Thank you.
Thank you.